Well, as we welcome our viewers on SABC2, we continue with the funeral service of Advocate George Bizos, a dedicated lawyer who dedicated his life to the fighting for basic human rights. He died on the 9th of September, and there we take you to the Greek Orthodox Church. Two of our colleagues have been covering this event this morning. Let's go now to Samkele Maseko. Samkele, just give us a clarification. Is there a separation between the Greek Orthodox Church and the Hellenic Cultural Center, or is it one venue?
Well, Desiree, it's essentially in the same precinct, but two different venues. On my left-hand side is the Hellenic Cultural Center, but just behind me is the Greek Heritage Church, where you can currently see the various priests coming out of the Greek Orthodox Church now, where the private service of Advocate George Bizos was taking place. It was attended by the family, various political dignitaries such as President Cyril Ramaphosa, the former President of the Republic of South Africa, Kgalema Motlanthe, the likes of the Minister in the Presidency, Jackson Mthembu, the Nelson Mandela Foundation, led by its CEO, Silo Hatang, was also there. The remains of Advocate George Bizos are about to leave the Greek Orthodox Church now to come out and be handed over to the Chief of the South African Air Force, Chief Msimang, who is the official mourner today. But once the remains of Advocate George Bizos leave that particular Greek Orthodox Church, they will be handed over to the Chief Mourner of the Air Force, who is representing General Shokwe today, who could not attend. You can also see the visuals of the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, President Cyril Ramaphosa, in conversation with one of the mourners there, as he is also making his way onto what you will eventually see on our right-hand side, which is the Hellenic Cultural Center, where the official service of government will take place. But various dignitaries and mourners have left the Greek Orthodox Church now, and you can see them outside and heading towards the Hellenic Cultural Center for the official service of government. Amongst those visuals, you can see Silo Hatang of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. You can see other mourners and dignitaries going to the Hellenic. In fact, my colleague Tabiso Rapakwana is going to just give you a glimpse of the visuals of the Hellenic Cultural Center, where the official government service will take place. But there's going to be a part where the remains of Advocate George Bizos, when they are about to enter that Hellenic Cultural Center, they will be under the custodian of the South African Armed Forces and the South African government, and the Chief of the Air Force, who's the chief mourner here today, will eventually be the chief mourner alongside the Commander-in-Chief. That would be His Excellency President Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa. As we can see now, the armed forces take over.
All right, as you can see, footage coming in from the Hellenic Cultural Center. This is when the cortege is now moved from the Greek Orthodox Church, where the private funeral service took place, and moves over. Apparently the two buildings are in the same precinct, and this portion of the funeral service is the government side. As you will remember, the late Advocate George Bizos has been afforded a state funeral, Category 1 state funeral, and this is where we will see President Cyril Ramaphosa addressing the funeral. As you can see, social distancing protocols being adhered to with the separation of seats. We saw earlier on Dr. Naledi Pandor going into the funeral service, the Minister of International Relations. And we also heard from Samkele that former President Kgalema Motlanthe is also in attendance at the funeral service of Advocate George Bizos, an exceptional human being, taking his final moments of his odyssey to freedom. That was the title of his book. I would suggest you read that book. It's quite fascinating. It was for me, especially because I thought he was Greek South African, but he was born in Greece and came to South Africa as a young person with his parents. The funeral service of Advocate George Bizos. President Cyril Ramaphosa having authorized that the national flag be flown at half-mast at every flag station in the country from Saturday, the 12th of September, until the evening of the special official funeral, which is today, Thursday, the 17th of September. Those flags will be flying at half-mast to recognize the passing of this legal giant who spent most of his life dedicating his career to the fight for basic human rights. There you see President Cyril Ramaphosa walking in. Samkele, can you tell us about this proceeding? We're struggling with the masks. I'm thinking that could be Judge Arthur Chaskalson, but maybe not. Oh no, it isn't him. Samkele, is there anything you're able to tell us about this point of this walk to the Hellenic Cultural Center? There we see them going in. Friends and family of the late Advocate George Bizos, a dedicated legal practitioner. He represented numerous high-profile activists in political trials, including Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, and other accused in both the 1956 treason and 1963 Rivonia trials. There you see President Cyril Ramaphosa making his way through. He has described George Bizos as one of the best legal minds in South Africa who contributed immensely to attainment of democracy. The official program is about to start. Let's take you there. All right, we're waiting. We're waiting for the official proceedings to begin in a moment. Now I think they're waiting for the casket to come through. Advocate George Bizos. Samkele, quite a morning. Advocate George Bizos taking his final trip on his odyssey to freedom. What can you tell us about this segment of the program?
Well, Desiree, this particular segment is when the armed forces essentially takes over. You can see the chief of the Air Force, Chief Msimang, is the chief mourner, and he has essentially taken over now. The president has gone into the Hellenic Cultural Center. There's a part where when the SANDF starts, I'm going to just let the sound of their escorting of Advocate George Bizos into the cultural center to speak for themselves and to give respect to the SANDF. Desiree, let's let them take over from now.
Horizontal. Steps.
Well, that was the SANDF ushering the remains of Advocate George Bizos into the official funeral of government here at the Hellenic Cultural Center, Desiree. The remains will inside be received by the government officials led by President Cyril Ramaphosa, who will deliver the eulogy here at the official funeral service of government. You did see that this doyen and giant of a human rights activist, a human rights lawyer, effectively being embraced by the South African government and taken into his final resting place of eternity by an official level 1 funeral by President Cyril Ramaphosa. We do expect him to deliver this eulogy. You'd remember that George Bizos has an illustrious history when it comes to the liberation struggle, being one of the panel of lawyers in that Rivonia trial of the ANC leaders who were charged back then for going into apartheid. But let the proceedings inside go on, and I'm going to hand it over to the government to officially start the ceremony inside.